right, we are going to be in James tonight. How appropriate, seeing as though every man in our church is named James. Got to be named James to be an elder here, I guess. Is that what we always say? We're going to be. I know this is one of those where you're going to say you stopped preaching and started meddling, Chris, because we're talking about taming the tongue tonight. That's where we are in this particular passage. And it is probably what you would call the plague that is in the Christian church is us tearing one another down so much and feeling like, in the United States we do this thing where we think we have the freedom because it's the United States, and the United States is all about freedom. And I have the freedom to say anything I want to say. And so I can tell you that I don't like your hair, or I think you gained weight, or I think, whatever, just to be mean. I'm all for free speech. Trust me, I am a free speech guy. But in terms of us knowing, and I will say this again tonight, every single thought that comes in our heads, we don't have to say. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to speak it. And so we've got to get to where we can literally be able to control those things. All right, so we're going to look at James 1:26, because there's one verse, but it addresses it kind of like if you were doing an outline before your paper starts. It says in 1:26, those who consider themselves religious, yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues, deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. And that is absolutely true. We are all very much aware and have been a part of churches where folks, we know, whether they're in our family or they're our friends or there's people we know, people who are just constantly bickering with other people, and they've been to about 50 different churches because they can't get along with people. And that is, this is who it's trying to address, and it's trying to hit us all. And it would be, goodness gracious, we would all, even some of the disciples could benefit from this teaching, right? So I have to tell you, and this is an example I'm going to use, is that in terms of us, what we would say, I have a cell phone. It's a relatively new Apple iPhone, and so I get mad at that phone a whole lot. I literally will say mean things to that phone, and the microphone's on, and I'm sure Apple is recording every word and putting it in a file somewhere. But in reality, if I went into the Apple store and I get that mad, if I walk in and I take it out on somebody who's working there, right? Because we tend to go, okay, I have bought your phone and now I have the right to chew you out, which is, I have done on occasions, right? Especially depending on how frustrated that I've gotten with it. But the thing we have to kind of really fathom is it the phone's fault? Is it the manufacturer of the phone's fault? Or is it the devil's fault? Right? Oh yeah, the devil's in my phone, or whatever, causing this up. Because we tend to, there's people within us that do that. Is it your wife's fault because she signed you up for the plan?
Yes.
Right? Okay. No, it's not. Or is it my fault?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so here it is. Maybe I don't have the knowledge I need to make it work. Maybe I don't have the experience. I've not used one before. I didn't go through any training to use the phone. And then physically, I got fat fingers, which makes it hard to dial, right? I have poor eyesight, which means I can't read sometimes what I need to read. And maybe my hearing's not where it needs to be. So I get so upset and frustrated at the phone, take it out on the Apple employee, when in reality, whose fault is it? Mine. Okay, so I'm sitting in the office the other day. Y'all are going to laugh at me and make fun of me. I'm sitting there, and John Gold and I are talking. He was helping me with something. And I'm sitting there, and I had my phone out, and I was like, I am so fed up. I'm going to have to go buy a $30 charger or more that I got to get one of those that it lays on, because my phone won't charge anymore. It's 2 or 3 years old at this point, and it just won't charge when you plug it in the wall. And so I need one of those you just lay it on, and now I got to go pay that, and I just hate having to spend money. And I'm just going, and John goes, can I see your phone for a second? You know how he is. He's so nice. He's so laid back. He goes, can I see your phone for a second? And I went, sure. And I handed it to him. And he goes over to the desk and he gets a paper clip. And I went, John, what are you going to do to my phone? John, I don't have insurance on my phone right now, John. What are you doing? He goes, I promise I won't hurt your phone. Takes the paper clip, undoes it, gets it pointed, right? And I'm like, I don't reset it. I don't want it reset. What are you doing? And he goes, it's okay. It's okay. And he takes it and he gets the charging port on the bottom of the phone. He takes that paper clip and he sticks it in there just very gently, like he's a doctor doing surgery, right? And he sticks it back in there, this paper clip, and he just starts raking like this on the inside of that little bitty port that's on the bottom of my phone. And he pulls it out, and it looks like lint that came out of your belly button. It was about this much lint that came out of that phone, right? So then he takes that and throws it in the trash, and I go, thank you so much. He goes, hang on. Puts it back in there again, and it starts raking it again. Pulls out another bunch that looks like came out of my belly button. Look, another thing, right? Throws that in the trash. I'm like, John, oh my goodness. He goes, this is all lint that comes out of your pocket when your phone's in your pocket, and you don't know it's in there. And I go, oh, well, thank you. And he goes, and he did it one more time and got a third bunch of stuff out of it. I was sitting there, how much stuff is inside this phone? He goes, do you have your charger? And I went, yeah. We plugged it in and it charged immediately. I was so mad. So mad at Apple. So mad at the Apple employees. So mad at this phone that it was, in 2 years, the charging port wasn't working. And John goes, actually, you just didn't know how to fix it. You just didn't know how to clean it. Right? You didn't know what was wrong with it. Do you understand how that works? Because the words that were getting ready to come out of my mouth or had come out of my mouth were from frustration and anger. Frustration and anger. There we go. About not knowing how to do it, right? So that is what we're going to deal with tonight, all right? So let's look at, just so, and I've got some action steps for us. These are things, and I'm going to tell you right now, for the people who aren't here tonight, this would be something that they all need to hear. For the folks that are sitting at home, and there's people that are watching online and participating on Facebook and Zoom and all of that, but for right now, for something that would make changes in your life, something that, because basically I think anger is one of those things that, you've heard, kind of you have two beasts within you, one good, one bad, and which one's going to defeat the other one, and it's the one you feed the most. You've heard that said, right? And so I do believe we feed our anger and it grows, and we feed our anger and it grows, and we feed our anger and it grows, and we end up living our life just being frustrated, angry, and yelling all the time because we're that upset and there's no reason to be, all right? So let's look. 1 of James says, not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. Okay, that means there'll be a survey at the end and you can review how you feel about my teaching. We all stumble in many ways. Remember that. We all stumble in many ways. You heard that, right? Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. That's only Jesus, by the way. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Okay, so let's remember that part right there, because if we were breaking, if any of y'all grown up on farms where you broke horses, and that sounds like such a horrible statement, but we're breaking horses. Anybody ever been a part of that where you do that? It is a tough process, and the horse despises it. The horse doesn't want to be broken. The horse doesn't want to be ridden. The horse doesn't want to pull a plow or a wagon. Doesn't want to do any of those things. But the farmer makes it so, whoever the guy is that's training the horse, they're teaching it to run around a track or whatever. I'm not worrying about this because I don't think there's anybody on there. So as far as the Zoom one, that's okay. I just want to give people the opportunity, those that are out of town, in case they were doing it. So the horse hates it. Now think about this for a minute. If you all can figure this out, let's imagine we're the horse. Each of us is a horse. And God is breaking us, right? That He's putting us through this to make us. What's the reason that a trainer does that to a horse? Well,
so it will follow their commands.
So it'll follow their commands. It would win a race at Kentucky Derby, right? Or it would pull the wagon, or it would do whatever we needed to do so that if Jill wants to go ride around the pasture on it, that is just amazing, or whatever it might be, right? And so if God is doing that to us, what eventually has to happen in the horse's mind? The horse has to make a decision, right? to obey. At some point that has to happen. If not, the trainer continues to do the same things over and over and over, and so the horse's life is miserable. Do you get that? And so in our lives, sometimes we will live 20, 30 years of miserable because we are going, nope, Lord, no, not going to do that. Nope, Lord, I'm going to do what I want to do, Lord. Nope, not going to do that. And we're miserable and we can't figure out why. And this is making the point that, hey, there's a reason that we put bits in the mouths of horses. There's a reason we put a rudder on a ship to steer it, and that it moves the whole animal. And it says, likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The big fire up in the Smokies in East Tennessee started by two little boys with matches. Very, very small matches. It burned all the way down got to within 100 yards of the back door of the aquarium in Gatlinburg. Burned thousands of acres of land, all because of that one spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Ouch, right? I mean, goodness gracious. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With the tongue we praise our Lord the Father, and with it we curse human beings, who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. All right, so it's hitting us. I mean, hitting us, like smacking us. This is so painful to listen to in terms of our tongue, and because we would say, if you've ever listened to every time that I watch The Greatest Showman with Sela, she loves that movie. I will sit there and I don't know. I sit there and I'm going through the movie and I'm like, yeah, it's a good movie. And then that woman sings that song, Never Enough, the main song from that movie. And I'm just sitting over there going, these tears are running down my face. That music is so beautiful that I just go, wow. And she's singing that. Her tongue is putting that out there, right? That she's singing. And it's incredible. It's unbelievable. If you've ever heard someone read poetry that's fantastic, you go, wow. If you've ever heard somebody read a book out loud in a reading, fantastic. If you've heard somebody give a speech, unlike this one, where you're just so moved, you would be like, wow. Those are all really good things, right? Those are things that with our mouths that we put beauty into the world. And this is saying that our tongue is so bad, right? That there's so much stuff that's bad about it. And part of that has to do with habits and what, and we're going to get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. All right. So, if there's another example out there, watch with me here for a second, and you help me identify the factors, okay? Because I'm going to start sounding like a psychiatrist or psychologist here for a little while. You're going to be like, golly, Chris has become a therapist now. He's really, he's got us in a different place. The other night, James calls and he says, hey, you guys want to go out and get some food? I'm like, Jill, you want to go get some dinner? And she's like, yeah, I'm just now leaving work. It sounds really good. I don't want to cook. You don't want to cook, so let's just go get some food with them. I said, okay. So I said, where do you guys want to meet, whatever? And we kind of all said we were going to go to this restaurant, and we met there. All of us met there. It was like Friday afternoon. So we get there, and the line is kind of spilled outside. There's people standing, and you can see people everywhere. The inside, we're standing like sardines inside, kind of like this, And it is one of those days where it's about 96 degrees outside, and we're standing right next to the front door. So when they open the door, whoosh, 96 degrees. People are standing outside, 96 degrees, and we're all up against each other. The AC in the restaurant is not working very well, and so we're standing there going, whatever. Now I want you to see something. What was common for all four of us on that Friday afternoon? What things had we all been a part of and done on Friday? We had all worked really hard all day. Right? All four of us had worked. So we were tired from work. How did we get there? struggled through traffic, right? Bumper to bumper, going in, people giving you the finger, people honking their horns, and everybody cutting in front of each other, all that. We'd gone through all that traffic to get there. Now we're standing in line, and it is past dinner time for the most part, and so we are what? Hungry. And hangry might be the word. I think Amber even used that word when she looked at me and said, "You look angry." And and then when we walked in, this restaurant was a Hispanic restaurant, and so there was a language barrier that was there as well. It was kind of like, I'm not sure we're communicating or whatever. There was that part that was going on. So you had a little bit of that. That was all happening. All those factors made what? Difficult, right? Made it difficult. All those factors, we're standing there, and so it's like this. Tick, tick, tick. It's only going to be about 15 minutes. Don't worry about it. Tick, tick, tick. Long 15 minutes. Tick, 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 tick. Right? I mean, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. The longer that traffic sits still on the interstate, your blood pressure's going, and it's boiling, right? You know what I'm saying? The more that the kids talk and you tell them to be quiet in your classroom and they continue to talk and they murmur, blood pressure goes up, right? If you're standing in line at wherever and the line doesn't move, well, you know what I'm talking about. You've been there. My mom has this story. Right after COVID got over with and everybody had gone, you'd gotten rid of their masks and everything. My mom was still wanting to wear a mask, and she went to her doctor's office, and she said, I walked in, and she goes, I was so afraid to go in to see my primary care person, but it was time for my yearly, just to go see. And she goes, I walk in there, and she goes, I went, nobody in that waiting room. There wasn't anybody. And she said, I went over and I sat down in the corner, and they said, it should just be about 10 minutes. And she goes, great. She said, I got out a magazine, and she goes, I got my mask on. And she said, this woman walks in the door, and she's going, doesn't have a mask on, and my mom is just kind of one of those that's deathly afraid of those things. She stayed shut in for a long time during COVID, and so there she is. She's over in the corner. The woman walks up, signs in. Where does she go?
Right beside her.
Sat down right beside her. 35 chairs in this room, and she goes over and sits down right next to mom, going. I mean, really, the big cough, right? So mom, she goes up, she just walks to the front and pretends like basically that she talks to the lady at the thing, and then she goes and sits somewhere else on the other side of the room. And she said over the course that it wasn't 10 minutes, it was more like 20 minutes that she had to wait, that people kept coming in and sitting down, and they were all sick. Every one of them, they all kept sitting right beside her, and she kept moving around, and she goes, blood pressure, blood pressure, blood pressure, blood pressure, this kind of thing. And then we had this conversation, and she went, I know, it's a doctor's office. That's where people go when they're sick, right? She at least acknowledged it, right? Because she was so mad that sick people were coming in there and sitting next to her. But that's where sick people go, is to the doctor, right? I mean, you get the point, is that it's very much like that I was talking about with cell phones. We were the other night at another restaurant with my brother-in-law and mother-in-law, and we go to this restaurant because on Tuesday nights, they have specials where their prices are cheaper, but it's also kids' night, and they have a guy there who makes balloon animals and all kinds of balloon stuff. I mean, he's doing all kinds of fun, really cool, fun stuff. And we go, and we're sitting outside, and it's so nice. The breeze is rustling my hair, we're just like, this is such a nice evening, and we're with family. It's Sela's last time with us, and we're enjoying this so much. And the guy, you can hear him over there, the balloon guy, goes, I'm making these new things tonight. He goes, they make noise when you do this. And so they go, like this, right? So every kid's like, oh, I want one. And they all go there and get in line. And so my brother-in-law is sitting there, and he's putting food in his mouth, and he's trying to have a conversation or whatever. And this kid comes over with one of these. And I mean, by now there's like 15 kids with these things they bought. And this kid is like this close to the back of his head. He's going like this, and Greg is going. And he turns around. It's like this close to his face, and he turns back around, and it's just red-faced, and Jenny's red-faced, Jill's red-faced. I'm just like, and we all sat there. We're kind of upset, and then we went. it's kids' night at this place. You knew that coming here. It's kids' night. And kids are going to be kids. Okay, all right. So we're just as long as doesn't make it fair. Yeah. Jump in and say, "Where's your parent?"
It wouldn't matter.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. But it was just funny. I mean, that thing was just like, it was almost hitting him. It was back in the back of his head like this. This kid was just doing it. All right, so let's. We know the problem is there. Let's talk about some action steps, some things that we can do to be able to fix and address some of these things. And these are all scriptural. So the first one is always going to be, you know that, every action step is going to be prayer. But this kind of prayer is a little bit different because, first of all, we're going to shift from the I want prayer, right? You know, the I want this, I want this, I want this, I need this. We can put it in whatever flowery language we want to. If the focus is on the things that we want rather than on rejoicing and thanksgiving and those kind of things, right? Or praying for other people, then actually we need to take notice that we're our own idol, right? That we're kind of worshiping ourselves, that it's all about us. So we're also going to shift from that idea of God is my genie and I'm going to rub the lamp and get to do what I want, that He's in charge, we're not, right? That when we're praying, God's in charge, not me. So I'm actually praying, Lord, show me what your will is, let me be a part of it, not, Lord, do this for me, right? I need this now. So there's that. And then the second half, and that comes from, 1 Thessalonians 5, 16 through 18 is, rejoice in the Lord always, right? Rejoice in all, it's basically, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances. That's what that says. Well, that's what we're called to every single day. And if we do that, remember we've been talking about counting our blessings, then it changes how we see the world. All right, the second part of that, though, is from Philippians 4, 8, and 9. So let's turn there. So the church in Philippi, Philippians 4, their Bibles, oh, golly, they're not on the table, are they? Somebody went and got them. Thank you so much, whoever did that. Philippians 4, and it's 8 and 9. And I want you to watch something here because it'll transform us. So 8 and 9. So Philippians 4, 8 and 9. Finally, brothers and sisters, so it's both of us, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Remember, think. My daughter's name is Selah. In the Old Testament, that's ponder, pause, meditate on this, right? Think about this. That's what her name means. It's a musical term, but that's what it means. And he says, think about those things. And then, watch the second half. It says, think about such things. And then verse 9, whatever you have learned or received or heard from me. So the things you see and hear, the things you've seen and heard of me, Jesus, that's what he's talking about. Put those things into practice, right? Right there it is. Everything that you've received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. So we're supposed to be, as part of our prayer, meditating. Meditating isn't just yoga, right? It's not just from Hinduism or any of those things. You all know, and I'm a big proponent of it, you'll hear Bea Still say the same thing. She works for a health company. And if you go to the doctor will tell you about breathing. That breathing, like when you're praying, taking deep breaths, that kind of breathe out the garbage, breathe out the evil, and breathe in the spirit, right? That you're actually, when you take those huge breaths, those deep breaths, will actually lower your blood pressure by 10 points if you do it for a couple of minutes. Literally. So you can sit in your car before you go to the doctor and do those deep breaths, and it will lower that down, and your doctor won't beat you up, right? That you'll be able to go, all right, I'm just telling you, that's something that's there. All right, so that's number one, is that prayer. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because you guys are praying people. This is a praying church. And so, but the second, number two of the action steps, and you're going to be like, Chris, who on earth are you? You have been taken by aliens and brought back. Number two, role play. Role play. So we're supposed to have compassion, and so part of that is we're going to pretend that whoever we're dealing with is our kid or grandkid. If you can, when you get on the phone, Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, I put kid or grandkid because some of us have trouble with our own kids, right? We get one of our kids on the phone, we may treat them worse than we would the cell phone salesman, right? We might treat them worse than the Walmart manager or the person who brought our food to our table cold, right? We're gonna treat them, but this is actually it, guys, is that imagine if that waiter or waitress that we're dealing with is your kid or your grandkid. Would you treat them differently? Absolutely. I can guarantee it without a doubt. You'd be going, you're so cute. I can't believe that you're over here. Oh my goodness, I'm so proud of you for being here, being a waiter or waitress. You're doing so good, right? And most of the time we walk in and we sit down at tables and we go, I'm the king and you're the peasant, and I need you to go do everything that I ask you to do. And then at the end, I may or may not give you a tip, right? That's the way we treat them. And if we'll just start putting whoever we're dealing with, if it's the mechanic who's telling you the estimate, if it's your doctor giving you the news, if it is whoever, the people in traffic, if we start saying they're our kid, we pretend that they're our kid or our grandkid, it changes the way we look at them and what we say. We change. Suddenly there's different filters that we use. Oh my goodness, I would never say those words to my kid or my grandkid. But I would say them to a perfect stranger that I don't like, right? We have to get to this point. Now let's look at the idea of, okay, so in Genesis 14 and 18 and 19, Abraham helps Lot. I mean, this much effort. Just bends over backwards to help Lot. In fact, the only reason that Lot survived Sodom and Gomorrah is because of Abraham. And so let's just be honest about that. And so he's helping Lot, who's not his own kid. That's his nephew. He's helping him, though, because he's what? Family. Would he have done it for a perfect stranger? We don't know, but I want you to see that because he wasn't pretending, but we need to. We need to get to the point to where we start seeing other people. Let's just immediately go, what if this was my kid or my grandkid? Would I be saying these words? Would I be doing these things? And it'll transform us in terms of the way that we treat people. All right, so let's look at that passage together. Matthew 9:36. We may not get through all these tonight. We'll finish it next week, and we'll do everything I can. But Matthew 9:36, in terms of dealing with compassion. So first book of the New Testament, 9:36. Matthew 9:36. It says, let's start with 35 because it'll set it up for us. Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. Now here it comes. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. All right? So he saw them, their limitations. He saw what they'd been through. And that would transform us too, is if we could see whoever we're dealing with, what kind of mourning they had, where they come from, the family they had, the education they had, how they have been, treated, we might do things in a different way, right? So this idea of compassion. Okay, so let's go to number 3. This is remember. Remember has to do with empathy in this case, all right? So look at Romans 15:1. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, and then chapter 15, verse 1. This is Paul writing to the church in Rome, where is exactly where he would be killed later on in life. The idea of empathy is the idea of walking a mile in somebody else's shoes, right? That idea. And so 15:1 in Romans says, "We who are strong ought to bear with the failings of the weak and not to please ourselves. Each of us should please our neighbors for their good to build them up." So we are strong, should empathize, right, with the failings of somebody else. And that is, when I say remember means, can you, no matter how old you are, remember back when you were a screw-up? Can you remember back to the mistakes that you made when you were young, when you were their age or whatever, right? My mom, I hate to keep using examples from my mom, but one of the best things was to have her as a mom when I was starting at like 15, 16 years old working jobs, part-time jobs, is because she had such a bad time with that as a kid, that she was very understanding with me, is that my mom worked at Shoney's, and she worked there for about a week until she had a big tray full of waters and iced tea that she was taking to a table, and a lady was talking to her here, said, "Ma'am, could you bring us our check?" And she went, "Yes, ma'am," and the tray went through it, and it dumped all of those drinks all over these 4 people that are sitting right here. And so the manager comes out and he is mad, but she gets fired, right? She gets let go. And so, mistakes that you made, maybe something where you messed up somewhere. And if we can take that, because for some reason, the older that we get, we tend to think, man, I've not made any mistakes. I've not very few mistakes that I've made. We just forgotten them, right? We just tend to forget them. It is, don't you love it when somebody says this to you? They go, "Would you go back to middle school and do it all over again?" And there are people who go, "Yes." Ashlyn Upshaw, I said, "Would you do school all over again?" She goes, "Absolutely. I'd go to kindergarten right now." And I went, I would never go back and do school all over again, right? Because I have a memory of all the things, because we tend to just remember, oh, field day was so good in the 4th grade. And, whatever. You know what I'm saying? We tend to remember, but we never remember all the studying, the tests, the getting yelled at, the paddlings. I'm that age. All those kind of things, right? That we forget those things. So we have to be able to remember to be able to deal with certain people, to have that empathy that's there. All right. So number 4. Take every thought captive. I told you that this would come back around. It's like a boomerang I threw out there. And it's going to come back and hit you in the back of the head at this point. Is that in 2 Corinthians 10:5, it says we take every thought captive to make it obedient to Christ. So if we're in a situation and somebody says something, the back of our head goes, "Say this." We're supposed to catch it before it gets out of our mouth, right? Take filter. Exactly. We go, right? We go, right? Is that we go, I can't let that come out. That's what I'm talking about, the idea that we get to the point where we actually catch ourselves, because so many of us would say, "That's just who I am. I'm just blunt. I just say what I think." No, you're just a jerk, right? No, it's not just who you are. We have the ability to control that, and we do control that. If you curse a lot, you wouldn't do it in front of your grandmother. You control it, right? If your baby daughter's there, you don't do it in front of her, but because you can control it. Most of us would say, "I can't control it. It just comes out because that's who I am, and instinctively that's what I say." We can control it. We do it on several occasions. So it's that idea of, that we don't have to say everything that comes into our mind. And sometimes for us, as we move on, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because I think we all understand it. Number 5, make a new policy. Okay? We live our lives by policies that we set. We say things. My friend Susan, she said when her kids got older, when they were in their 20s, she said to them, she had 3, she had 2 boys and a girl, and she said, "How come you guys," she asked the question, she said, "Have you guys ever used drugs before?" This was just around a meal when they were married and stuff. And they went, "No, we've never used drugs." And she said, "Why not?" And she said, her daughter spoke up and she goes, "We're not the type of drug people. We're just not drug people. We just decided that we weren't going to ever do drugs. We're just not going to do that." And she said, "So you just made a policy. It was just your policy you weren't going to do drugs." She goes, "Yeah." Just said no. It was just we just didn't do drugs. That wasn't who we were. And then she goes, "Did y'all drink?" And they went, "Oh, yes, we drank." And she goes, "Well, what was the difference?" And she goes, "Well, we were drinking people. We were okay with drinking. We weren't okay with doing drugs. We could see how the bad happened to people who did drugs, but we didn't see the bad when people drank." And so they had a policy they lived by. I'm not saying it was a great policy, but it was at least a policy, right? That's how they lived their lives. And that always stuck with me. But this idea is who are you going to be? Because we tend to kind of know who we want to be, right? You guys all have been around enough people who, I had a lady that I used to go to church with, and when she came in on Sunday, white gloves, little short white gloves. I mean, we're talking about 70s, 80s, 90s. She had little white gloves on Sunday. She would come in, her purse would be tucked over this arm right here. She would have a hat on that was tilted one way or the other and had a little thing came down. Every Sunday, she had on nice shoes, and she was coordinated, right? I mean, it was all, and that was who she was, and that was, she had decided that was who this going to give my best to God every week, right? I mean, nothing wrong with that at all. But that's who she decided that she was going to be. You guys have been around enough people that there's somebody you know who wears nothing but sports jerseys. That's just who they are. That's who they decided to be. And so when you walk in with your family on Thanksgiving or Christmas, you know who everybody in the room is trying to be. There's Big Shot, right? There's the funny guy. There's, right, you know who I'm talking about. There's the one that's going to try to shock everybody, say something so outlandish that it gets everybody's attention and everybody goes, okay? That you know who these people are before they walk in the room, do you not? Somebody's going to eat till they're sick, completely sick. I mean, like sick. You just know that all this is going to go on. And then there's going to be the people that fist fight. You know who they are, and they're always going to be doing that. So we live by policies, and let's decide right now that we're going to be a builder rather than a destroyer. Now, if you watch any HGTV show, and Facebook's going to have a problem, but I just said that probably, right? Is that any show on television that has to do with renovation of a house, the first maybe 5 minutes of each show, there's so many smiles on these people's face, and they go, "It's demo day! It's demolition day!" They've all got sledgehammers in their hand, they're running through walls and doing it, and they're just like, "Yes, it's demo," whatever.
It's not that
Fun. It's fun.
It's not that fun.
But I know. But they're excited about that part rather than the building. And for us in the church, we have to be excited about building somebody up and watching them flourish, watching them transform like the caterpillar into a butterfly, watching that go on. And so we have to decide. We make this policy of not going to be a destroyer, because everybody, for the most part, the funny people that are in movies are usually destroyers, aren't they? Sarcastic people that are usually tearing other people down and at their expense kind of thing. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things. I'm just saying we have to decide who we're going to be. So it is when you're a little kid and you're in church, you stand by your mother holding on, like they used to talk about hanging on to the apron strings, hanging on by your mom, and you're standing there. And adults don't think you're listening. They just think, oh, that's Nora. She's just, she's a little girl. She does. And so we stand there and say such horrible things about other people in the church and other people in our lives and whatever, and we just think they don't hear any of that. And they do. All those kids hear all of that, and then they go, why did you say that about that lady, or whatever. And then you get these moments. But we have to decide to build people up. And the scriptures, let's look together. Look at 1 Corinthians 8:1. So to the church in Corinth, Paul writing, 1 Corinthians 8:1. And this is kind of getting to the heart of what we're getting at. Now, he's rambling here with a little bit of things hitting you kind of, bang, bang, bang. He says, now about food sacrificed to idols, we know that we all possess knowledge. But knowledge puffs up while love builds up. Those who think they know something do not yet know as they ought to know, but whoever loves God is known by God. It's talking about that if we have love, then we're trying to build people up rather than tear them down. The idea is, we're going to get more power by tearing everybody else down around us, and that doesn't work at all. The churches that thrive build rather than tearing each other down. All right, so number 6. Give to others to reduce your selfishness. All right, these are, we spent a couple of sermons a few weeks ago focusing on the spirit of joy. Jesus first, others, then you. Right, that we get to the point. And this is actually, you are shifting. This is one of the hardest points on this whole thing, because you have to physically shift from one idol you're worshiping to another one. Because the idol that a lot of us worship is us. We worship ourselves. So we spend all of our time, talent, energy, and money on ourselves. And so if I say we have to reduce that selfishness and shine the light on somebody else, then we give other people our time, talents, energy, and money, right? Whether that's at church or in the community or wherever you are. And so when we start changing that focus, then the idea is that we value those things more than ourselves. They become precious to us. If you're focused on you, you're never satisfied. Because like I have said, you never can have enough money. And I'm not the one who said that. Solomon did, who got brought 25 tons of gold a year. He said you can never have too much money. 25 tons of gold a year. 1 year of that would have been enough for me, right? I'm done. Thank y'all. You can give it to my son. There, 25 tons of gold will do me, right? I mean, that's a lot of money, right? And so for us, you can't ever have enough money. There's always a better house, always a better car, always a better spouse. There's always, right? I mean, all of those things, you will never be satisfied. And so when we start blessing other people, when we get invested in their lives, man alive, every time they make a good choice, every time that they take a step up, we're just like, I mean, it just blows us away. We're just like, wow, that was awesome to watch God do that in their life. Now, be aware, for us, you have to find your spot. When I'm talking about helping somebody else, I always talk about find the person that breaks your heart. Because for me, and you've heard me say this, the homeless do not break my heart. It breaks Jimmy's heart, but it doesn't break my heart. I don't go, here, I have to do something. I won't be able to sleep tonight, right? It's not that for me at all. But there are plenty of other examples because of the background that I come from. Battered women, I'm going to do everything I can to try to make a difference in the lives of women that are being battered. I'm going to stand up for them. I'm going to find the guys that are beating on them, and I'm going to say, here, beat me instead, because this ain't going to happen anymore, right? We're going to do anything we can. So find, if it's children in Africa, if it's kids with disabilities, if it's elderly, if it is, right, any of these things that we're talking about, find the one that breaks your heart, and then it's easy to shift that light off yourself and onto them, because you're like, oh my goodness, look at this, and if you can put a face on it, then it changes everything. Because now it's not just, I'm helping people with disabilities. No, now I'm helping Joe. And that changes it. That shifts it, because now Joe's real. Joe's somebody that I'm helping. And so, for us, give to others to reduce your selfishness, right? Number 7, who are we imitating? Who are we mimicking? And this is, it's about our habits, and it is, if you watch enough of the same show, you'll start acting like characters in that show. Do you believe me in that? It really is. It really does happen, and I know that sounds weird. The same premise, though, if you kind of like, I don't know if I agree with you there, Chris, or not, but if you go hang around with certain people, don't they rub off on you a lot of times? The stuff that they say, the stuff that they do. I mean, it is kind of funny to me, in just the way that kind of overflows into us. It's that garbage in, garbage out thing. And so it is, for us, the idea is, if I grew up with family that was this way, then I imitate a lot of what they say and do in my life, and sometimes I need to change that. And am I imitating Jesus? Am I imitating, people in the church who are good, godly people, or am I imitating stuff from TV, movies, all those kind of things, video games, all of that? All right, and then last one, judge not lest ye be judged, right? Is that the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus saying, okay, whoever I'm dealing with, unfortunately, did you know this? I did this one time at camp, is that I took pictures and I put them up on the screen. They were just pictures I pulled out of a magazine, all kinds of different magazines. Took pictures of them, put them up on the screen. And I had all junior high kids there, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and I just put somebody's picture up there. Nobody did make new, right? It's just random. I mean, it wasn't famous people. They were just like an ad for a frame or something, right? You know what I mean? It's just random pictures. But they were all dressed differently, and they were from all different backgrounds. And I put a picture up there, and I'd say, tell me about that person. They're mean. And I was like, the guy in a blue shirt, why is he mean? Just is. I don't like the way that he looks. And you go like, and you put up another picture, and they go, been to prison. You're like, been to prison? Right, I mean, and they were just immediately, this was over and over. I put like 20 pictures up, and they were telling me all about these people. They were just instantly, it was just these judgmental things. And so, when I go into I can't even, I'm catching myself before I say names of places. But I have a restaurant that I go into occasionally, and if I walk in, the lady will go, hello, honey, baby, loving lamb. Is there something I can do for you? And I'm like, and she's just as sweet as she can be, and I'm like, man, she is from the heart of the South, right? I mean, this woman is just, and she's poured me a cup of coffee, that kind of thing. And it's just this nice thing. And sometimes you walk into places and you go, I don't like that guy. You haven't even met him. Haven't even said a word. You're from across the room. And you go, no, I don't really care for that guy. I'm gay right now. Right? And it has nothing to do, it doesn't have a t-shirt on that says, I hate ministers, nothing of that, right? It didn't have anything to do with that. Jesus stinks. It doesn't say he didn't have that on, right? I mean, that's none of that. But we make these instant judgments of people based on just the way they look. And, you know, it's funny because if James Myers comes to my house, the dog will not stop barking. My dog barks the entire time. And then if James sits down in a chair, then my dog goes, I have no clue. I don't know what that means. I don't know there's a biblical moment there. But my dog is making a judgment when James walks in my house. I go, he doesn't like tall people, right? I mean, it's the only thing I can think of because he's so dang tall. He's imposing. And so we do the same thing, though. We see that especially, and some of us never grow out of that. All right, so the complementary steps are all things that you've heard me talk about before, and I'm not spending a lot of time on them. But all of those are things to reduce your stress. To reduce your stress, right? If I talked about walking into that restaurant to wait in line for a table, I had 5 key things that were going to affect what my night was like in that moment. Because I had worked hard all day. I sat in that silly traffic all the way there. It was 100 degrees outside. There was a language barrier, and we were pushed in there like sardines, and the air conditioner wasn't working. Those are all factors, and so if my stress level was already, if I didn't sleep good at night, if I hadn't eaten good, right, all of those kind of things, whatever, if I haven't been exercising, all of those things, then it just makes it worse. It just exacerbates it. It makes it worse. And so for each of us, we are at the point now where how do we keep the stuff from coming out of our mouths? Well, we have to be putting more of Jesus in and start seeing the people around us like Jesus, right? Because in all actuality, watch this. Watch the faces around you. Hebrews says, be kind to strangers because you may be entertaining angels unaware. Can you imagine walking in and you've been, you know, whatever it might be. I walked in, I had to get all the utilities hooked up, right? So I go in and I'm over at the place getting the electric switched in, and the lady's just as nice as she can be. Sign this form right there for me. There you go. And I said, do I need to pay you a deposit? No deposit necessary. You're good. Thank you so much. I got everything I need here. Have a great day. It's awesome. I'm glad you're moving to Columbia. I said, awesome. So then I go to get the water changed over, and the guy's going, I'm going to need $150 from you, and then I'm going to need this and this. You're going to need to get that, and I'm going to need to have this, and we're going to sign this in front of a notary, and then I'm going to need, and did you do this, and did you do this, and did you do this, and then, and I was like, and I was standing there going, a little different kind of environment here than at the other place that I was at, right? And I said, can I ask you a question? He goes, yeah. No, yeah. I didn't have to pay a deposit for the electric. Why am I having to pay a deposit for the water? He goes, we don't pull your credit. They do. And I went, so if they pulled my credit and didn't charge me a deposit, maybe you shouldn't be charging me a deposit. Doesn't that make sense?
Yes, it would.
I goes, we don't have access to that information, so I'm going to need $150. I went, okay. All right. I went, okay. But you get my point, is for us to be able to see those folks as Jesus and to be able to live out what we claim to know and what we've written on our hearts. Lastly, Jesus says every single day we take the stuff that we put in our heart and it comes out of our mouth. And so be aware that we're responsible because we've put all that stuff into our lives. We've put all that stuff into our bodies, and so we have to be making some changes to be able to address that. God bless you. Thanks for joining us tonight.